Ano ai ke aloha ya kako. Thank you for joining us. Today we will witness Governor Josh Green sign SB 3202, which will empower homeowners to build accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, on residentially zoned lots and increase affordable housing construction while decreasing homelessness statewide. Facilitated questions and answers will follow promptly after remarks conclude, and the formal bill signing will commence shortly thereafter. Without further ado, it is my privilege to welcome Governor Josh Green.
Okay, aloha. Thank you guys for coming out. We're going to dive right in. First, let me say we have a housing crisis. It is serious. It's affecting everyone in our state, and our legislature stepped up. We're taking action. Okay, we're taking action. This is very hard work, and I'm grateful to you guys, and I'm grateful that we had Senator Schatz really deeply engaged in this process. That does not happen all the time. So, thank you, Brian. Super. Okay, so I have a couple slides here. We're going to just run these slides first. So, we're talking about housing reform today. When the elections occurred, this was by far the most controversial matter, which is just not having enough housing for people, and how do you solve the problem. So everyone shared that with me, and so we have to take some kind of action. Here it is. So we're unlocking barriers to affordable housing. Next slide, please. A little bit of background. UHERO, who we work very closely with at the university, has a housing division, and they did a lot of research, which we appreciate. We are data-based as an administration. Number one, our local families are leaving in large numbers in the last few years, and that is because housing is too expensive. They can't get it. So they're going to Las Vegas, which, while being a very nice place, has an inferior football team, and is not really where people should live. If they're local people, they should stay in Hawaii. So people are leaving. So we have to do something about that. Prices are rising. The median home price has increased by 350% since Brian and I started in the State House, 20 some odd years ago. It's just too expensive. Finally, housing is locked for people. Only 1 in 5 of our households here in Hawaii can afford a median single-family home, and that was made more difficult by the fact that interest rates are very high right now. No normal person can afford a house, basically, without really reaching, and it's just too hard. So the data is there. Everyone knows we have to take action. Next slide, please. So what action are we taking? We committed to building 13,000 affordable units by 2026. So we need tools to do that, and the legislature has given us a bunch of tools, which are fantastic. We also have 60,000 units in the pipeline, but a lot of them get stuck in the pipeline because the financing doesn't match up, or the properties are just too difficult to acquire, or people don't make moves on TOD. So many problems. We have to kind of break this logjam. So a couple things have happened that are positive. We completed 3 projects, which are 808 units in the first quarter. We broke ground on School Street the other day, 250 units. Haku Kapolei is got a developer now that's 900 units, and so on. We've also been filling a lot of housing positions. One of the emergency proclamation rules has been to allow us to fill some of these positions, which is very important because someone's got to do this work, and a lot of these guys are sitting right here. So I'm grateful that you're doing this. We did another big thing. When I say we, I should say the legislature did the work, and I was really grateful to be able to sign Senate Bill 2919, the short-term rental bill. I'll say it again, we have way too many short-term rentals in our state. Many of them are illegal, and we now have empowered the counties to bring some of those short-term rentals back to local families. The numbers are about 89,000 short-term rentals across the state. We believe about 75,000 of them are of questionable approval. We will do well if each of the mayors take advantage of that legislation and bring housing back to the market, particularly in West Maui in the short term. There's about 7,000 units that need to be brought back to the market from the Minatoya list. If that happens, we can get through the tragedy on Maui much more easily. So that's really good. And then finally, we are expediting procurement all over the place, but particularly to rehabilitate vacant units. So that's important. Okay, now let's jump over to unlocking our community partners. That's the next slide. So these are some of the bills I'm going to talk about. You're going to get a lot more detail from the chairs. And I mean, we got two great housing chairs. I don't know what to say. All right. Thank you, guys. This was a collaboration, but they dove right into it. So Senate Bill 2066, it helps with HHFDC's project exemptions for partners. Thank you for that. Senate Bill 2133 expands the board issuance of bond issuance powers. Basically, we need bonds to build these houses. It's important. Senate Bill 2090 creates an affordable apartment program in the business districts through adaptive reuse of existing commercial buildings. As everyone knows, the world changed after COVID, and all kinds of commercial buildings could be used differently. And let's put some people in there. Sorry to dumb it down so much, but you guys will explain. Okay. House Bill 1925 gathers community stakeholders to update the State Planning Act. Man, does that sound sexy. I will tell you, these bills each incrementally do something different to help expedite building. And sooner or later, the fever will break and we'll have housing for a lot of people, but this is what it's going to take. Next slide. Unlocking HHFDC's tools. You know, they have had difficulties because there's caps on the bonds that they can do. So they can allow for more investment with this bill. The cap now will be $378 million, and it provides for these tax-exempt bonds. Again, details will come from our key stakeholders, but this is a picture of, I think, one of the units that will be kind of what we get from this bonding. And now let's go to the one that's a little more controversial. Okay, this is Senate Bill 3202. Look, I know people express worries to us when we take bold action. We're here to solve problems, after all. What this bill does is it allows urban homeowners with utility capacity to build up to two accessory dwelling units on residential lots. Right now, as I was speaking with the chair, people can build an Ohana unit, like you've got some relatives that you need to try to house on your property, or you can build an ADU. This will allow you to build up to 2 units on your property. This is a very straightforward way to help, in the right place, build some additional capacity for our people so that they don't have to leave and be in other states. It's very important. Also, what it does is it brings in the counties and it brings their mana'o into this. So again, very important, but we have to take action. We can't just keep kicking the can down the road. And it's going to take time to implement some of this. So I'm really proud of the team for deciding to take deliberate action. So you've seen some major decisions. You saw us take on STRs, short-term rentals. Next week, we're going to talk about really lowering taxes for local people so they can afford to rent, afford to live in Hawaii. But if we don't have the housing units, much of it will be for naught. So really, that's what we wanted to say. Go to the next slide. This is our obligatory, see, things are good. We have a flower here, in spite of the fact that we have very aggressive legislation, which will help people, Look, everyone, please give it a chance. We've gone years and years and years without taking bold action on housing. And now, because of this, we're going to see some results. So think positively, think of opportunities to help your fellow man in the state, and we're all going to come out better for it. Thank you, guys. Aloha.
Mahalo, Governor Green. Now please welcome U.S. Senator Brian Schatz, Chairman of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development.
Well, it's been a minute since I've been at this podium. Gosh, it may have been 12 years. Don't worry. We both like our jobs. This is an incredibly hopeful event. I'm going to talk about 3202 in particular, because I think it was such a seminal moment for Hawaii politics and for Hawaii housing. It was very difficult to arrive here today because it took courage, tenacity, and it took an unwillingness to give up even under the most difficult political circumstances. We are finally doing something meaningful to to make it easier for families, workers, and local people to live in Hawaii and afford a place of their own. If you want to embrace your neighbors, if you really care about the firefighter, the teacher, the construction worker, the elderly, the disabled, the student, you have to allow them to find a place to live. And that's what this bill does. If we want to change Hawaii for the better and stop losing our local families, we simply have to make it easier to build enough housing. It is not enough for us to say we are in favor of housing generically. We also have to be for housing when it may inconvenience us, when we may see that housing, when it may even be in our own neighborhoods. We are tens of thousands of units short. And if we are serious about changing that, it's going to take courage and clarity and a willingness on the part of the legislature and community leaders to do hard things. This problem took many decades to build up because a lot of very good people wanted to protect for some very important things. But the problem is that regulation is always a one-way ratchet. And so it built up and it built up and it built up, and people of goodwill created a thicket of regulations that make it almost impossible to build the thing that we all say we want and need. And so I'm not just hopeful about the potential impact of this legislation, I'm even more hopeful about a movement that is growing in Hawaii, led by young people and assisted by the AARP, that says enough is enough, that we will protect bedrock environmental and cultural resources, that we will protect what is special about Hawaii, but what is special about Hawaii is our people. And there is nothing good about forcing them to move to the mainland because we already got ours. And that's what this bill is about. It is about allowing families to try to make it work, to try to make the arithmetic work. And so I want to thank all of you here today, and I had lunch with several of the organizers, and it was great fun. Mike DeHelig, who was on my staff and helped at the legislature, is actually on Maui doing housing stuff, which is kind of a bummer for him, but appropriate in the sense that he just never stops working for housing. On the House side, I want to thank especially Chair Evslin, David Tarnas, Lauren Matsumoto, Kristen Kahaloa. On the Senate side, Chairman Stanley Chang, with whom I've been working on these issues for, half a decade now. I see Tyler DeSantos Tam from the Council, who will no doubt play a constructive role in implementing this legislation. Donovan Dela Cruz, Chris Lee, the Senate President, the House Speaker, the majority leaders, Nadine Nakamura and Drew Kanuha, and again, so many community organizers. The reason I think this bill is a big deal is because I think it'll make a difference. But the reason that I think we should all take hope in the enactment of this law is that we're beginning to change the political equation as it relates to housing. There is nothing progressive about preventing housing. Thank you very much.
Mahalo, Senator Schatz. Up next, I'd like to introduce Senator Stanley Chang, Chair of the Senate Committee on Housing.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Governor Green for having me here and for signing these important bills today. I want to thank Senator Schatz as well for all of your hard work on housing over many years now. You're one of, if not the most pro-housing federal elected official in the country, and this day is an outgrowth of your efforts. Under the Green administration, the tide is turning on housing. HPHA is building 10,000 new units, probably the largest housing development program of any public housing authority in the country. DHHL is building over 2,000 new units with funding appropriated by the legislature. 3 separate state agencies are building 99-year leasehold condominiums, the Aloha Homes model that I've been fighting for many years. And the State Rental Housing Revolving Fund is now financing well over half of all housing construction statewide. We are now the market maker on new housing construction, and I look forward to expanding that role and enabling even more housing to be financed. I think we can all agree here that we're not going to end the housing shortage without a dramatic expansion of housing production statewide. And that's why I want to talk about two specific bills here. The first is SB 2066. And Senate Bill 2066 is an expansion of the HRS 201H-38 program. Passed in 1972, this is probably the most pro-housing, the most successful YIMBY bill in Hawaii and maybe the entire country. In just the last 4 years, it has facilitated the production of almost 8,000 units on just the island of Oahu alone and over 10,000 statewide. The problem is that we have rising interest rates. And also, the counties are imposing ever stricter income requirements, a double whammy that makes it harder and harder to build new housing. What this bill will do is it will prevent the counties from forcing lower and lower AMI or income requirements, as long as every single unit in every new building constructed for the lifetime of the building is available only to local residents who are either owner or renter occupants. That means no more dark towers. That means no more parking spaces for the speculation of wealthy overseas investors. It means housing for local people. And I think that hundreds, if not thousands, of new units will be built using this new provision, SB 2066. The second bill I want to talk about today is SB 2133. So for the neighbor islands especially, but also for Oahu, the principal barrier to new housing construction is a lack of infrastructure. And this bill does two things to break that deadlock. The first is it expands an innovative new program at the state level that we passed a couple of years ago that only covers TOD in urban Oahu, and it expands that statewide across all the islands. And the second thing it does is it enables state bonds to be used for that program. And that's very important because state bonds have a much lower interest rate than the commercially available private bonds and other lending mechanisms that you have today. So this is a bill that will potentially unlock thousands more units on all of the islands of Hawaii through providing a new and innovative new mechanism for financing the infrastructure that we so desperately need, especially in the wake of Lahaina fires. I'll just add one more word about SB 3202, which I know the others have talked about and Representative Evslin will address soon. I want to extend my personal thanks to Senate President Ron Kochi, who worked very hard on making this bill happen. I want to thank again Senator Schatz, who, along with working on this measure for the last 5 or more years, just with me personally, put Mike DeHelig on this effort. And Mike DeHelig, in the very complex negotiations on this bill, pulled rabbit after rabbit out of the hat. And without his hard work, without his creativity, we would not be standing here today. So this is my message to the people of Hawaii who are burdened by high housing costs and who are being driven out of state every single day. Change is coming. The tide is turning. And very soon, you will see a ton more housing being built just for you local people across the entire state. Thank you.
Mahalo, Senator Chang. Next, please welcome Representative Luke Evslin, Chair of the House Committee on Housing.
Aloha, everybody. Thank you, Governor Green, for convening this press conference today and signing all these really impactful bills. And thank you for your continual leadership and moral clarity on the need to solve the housing crisis. I really appreciate it. This package of bills, in my opinion, represents the most important housing regulatory reform and zoning reform passed by the legislature in probably over 40 years. SB 3202 will enable 3 generations of a family to live with dignity on the same property. It'll enable aging kupuna to age in their home. It'll enable young homeowners like myself to afford a mortgage by renting out portions of their home. It'll also reduce permitting fees and expedite the process for subdividing a property. And in a lot of ways, HB 2090 is probably even more impactful in that it'll lead to the revitalization of downtown areas and underutilized malls. It'll ensure that people, if they choose to, can live close to where they work, maybe even in the same building. And this is by legalizing residential uses in all commercial areas and reducing the barriers to the conversion of commercial buildings to residential. And I want to thank all of my colleagues in the legislature for their bold support of these proposals. I know for many it was a hard vote to take. I certainly want to thank my counterpart in the Senate, Senator Chang, for all of the deliberation and collaboration and daily debate on these bills and others. And want to thank House leadership, Representative Majority Leader Nakamura, House Speaker Saiki for their support on both the policy and the political side, and then certainly Senate President Kochi for helping get it through the Senate. But I also want to recognize that solving the housing crisis and passing bills of this nature requires collaboration between, I think, all levels of government, federal, state, county, and community. And so on that note, I want to recognize really the heroic work of Senator Schatz and his leadership on this front for years, and then certainly on this package of bills, and the support of his staff, especially Mike DeHelig, who others have said was really instrumental in ensuring passage today. On the county level, we had all 4 county mayors, and then the really hard work of every county planning director in both vetting and wordsmithing, and continually giving feedback and support for these bills. And then the community level, in a lot of ways, there's probably more than I can name off everybody individually, but 6 individuals worked really day in and day out to ensure the passage of these bills, both on the policy side and on the advocacy side. Josh Wish, Sterling Higa, Ted Kafalis, Damian Wakiloa, Matt Popovich, and Trey Gardner. You guys have been incredible team on this, and thank you for all your work. And lastly, I just want to recognize that as impactful as these bills are, right, they're not going to solve the housing crisis overnight. In a lot of ways, the housing crisis is worse today than it's ever been before. Likely today, dozens of individuals and families are forced to move away. Dozens will be forced to move away tomorrow, dozens the next day, and all the way to the end of the year. Anybody who's bought a home recently or is renting a home right now or is living with family and friends is faced with this daily crushing insecurity of not knowing whether they can live in Hawaii or how long they're going to be able to live in Hawaii for. And this financial insecurity, and for many of us, Hawaii is the only home that we know, right? And not knowing whether you can stay in Hawaii is taking such a tremendous toll on our families and our communities. And so the housing crisis is, I think, by far the biggest crisis that we face. But what gives me hope, more so probably than even this individual piece of legislation getting signed today, is this incredible group of stakeholders who came together, again, from every level of government and from community to fight really hard for the passage of these bills and to take cracks to ensure that we could get these through. And so I'm looking forward to the continued work with all of these stakeholders and everybody in this room to keep coming back year after year, right? Hopefully next year we've got an even bigger package, and the year after that a bigger package. And I think step by step we really can turn the corner and hopefully solve the housing crisis and ensure local families can stay in Hawaii. Thank you.
Mahalo, you're tall. Mahalo, Rep. Evslin. At this time, we're going to commence with questions from the media, and I'm going to start with Bryce Moore, KHON2.
Either for you, Governor, or maybe Senator Chang. It seems like before previous versions of the bill, maybe there was stipulations about square footage having to do with how many ADUs could be built. Now it just sounds like it's up to 2 on one property. Can you kind of detail that, just explain that a little more?
So the question is around the bill and clarifying square footage versus the number of units.
So in the initial version of the bill, the counties were prohibited from restricting the lot size of these units to be greater than 2,000 square feet. And that requirement has come out of the bill in its final form. So the bill that's being signed today continues to give the counties complete power over issues like the minimum lot sizes, like infrastructure connections, like any other discretionary issues that may come up when considering whether or not to issue these permits. So those powers remain with the counties today and will continue to do so after the bill's signature.
Next, I'm going to go to Kristen, KITV. Oh, sorry.
Somebody had wrote on Facebook this morning that this would, they anticipated this press conference saying that it would make neighborhoods more crowded, increases profits developers, it creates, other issues. Can you just address that, because it kind of blasted out of Facebook.
Kristen's question is around addressing some criticisms online regarding this bill.
The senator has a particular rage for this kind of NIMBYism.
Rage, passion. Look, we need more housing, and we have to understand that when the Supreme Court outlawed Jim Crow segregation, that organizations that wanted to continue segregation sat down with the then National Association of Realtors and came up with restrictive covenants, minimum lot size, and they had specific language that they used: protecting neighborhood character, protecting community integrity. And even this year, as this bill was being contemplated, individual legislators said that this was going to cause slums and violence and disease, vectors for disease. And we need to understand that that language is rooted in post-Jim Crow America. And so those of us who are steeped in the Democratic Party's traditions need to understand that when we oppose housing on the basis of neighborhood character, that when we oppose housing on the basis that densification would cause disease, we are really the great-great-grandchildren of Jim Crow. And so there needs to be a reckoning among Hawaii progressives about what it means to be progressive. If you are for the nurse having housing, if you are for the elderly having housing, if you are for the disabled having housing, if you are for UH students or HPU students having housing, that housing has to go somewhere. And some things matter more than the aesthetics of your neighborhood.
Yeah, I just say, what the hell? We need more housing, okay? And telling other people they can't find a home here isn't okay. I'm just translating what the good senator said. Yes, that's right. So, like, the sky won't fall, and this definitely has nothing to do with profits for anyone. It is catastrophic when generations are broken up and we just don't have enough homes for them. And I will say this, and the senator said it very well twice. We have a shortage of teachers because they can't afford houses. We have a shortage of nurses because they can't afford houses. We had a shortage of firefighters even on Maui because you just can't have a house. And so there are some fundamental imbalances that are out there. This will restore some balance. But give it a chance, everyone. Give it a chance. Bring families back together. The treasure we have, as was stated very eloquently before, is our people. Let's let our people stay.
Up next, Andrew Gomes, Honolulu Star Advertiser.
With or without anger, can somebody
Passion.
respond to a claim that had been made in some of the testimony that when you increase density, you will increase property values and therefore make housing more expensive, not less expensive?
Okay, so read it one more time. When you increase...
By giving permission to add density to residential properties, this is some argument made in testimony, that when you do that, you permit greater density, you're going to increase the value of those properties, and thus the price of housing will go up.
So the request is to address something submitted in testimony regarding this bill as it relates to increasing density and a connection to property values going up as a result.
Yeah, I'm trying to address that briefly. One, there's overwhelming evidence that the more housing you build, that will drive down the market price of housing, or at least make a difference, slow down the rate of increase. So that part is clear. And to answer that more directly, I have a single-family home. I bought a home with an illegal rental unit inside of that home, Kauai's zoning rules are pretty flexible. So I bought that home with the intention of making that into a legal unit. When I made that into a legal unit, the value of my house did increase probably by $200,000 or so. But the value per unit is significantly less, right? I went from a single family home at $600,000 to essentially two homes for $900,000. So the value of my property is more, but the value per unit is less. And so the intention here is to help generate lots and lots of rental inventory to try and stabilize or bring down the market price of rent. Thank you. And also, sorry, if I could just answer really briefly the previous question also around overcrowding of neighborhoods. And I want to be really clear that the final version of the bill gives a lot of flexibility to the counties to determine the best way to implement it, and it doesn't take away any regulatory authority for the county to regulate the size of a structure, impermeable surface on that structure, off-street parking requirements, height, floor area ratio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So I think that claim that this will lead to overdeveloped or overcrowding is patently false because the counties still retain a lot of authority over that. Thank you.
Well said, Chair. The new generation, a lot of young people would like to rent, and a lot of elderly individuals probably want to give resources to their children in inheritance and are happy to be renting instead, and they're going to make those decisions. So generationally, a lot of housing will change hands, but a lot of people from the millennial generation may choose not to go for a single family home for $1.2 million at 7% interest. I mean, it's just not really feasible for a lot of people. And so to have an additional rental or two rentals on someone's property that have been authorized and are legal should really help us as we go forward with this new generation. And a lot of these young people are our workforce. They're the teachers that are just starting. They're the policemen that we'd like to recruit. So there's just a lot of need. And again, I'll reiterate, we're debating these bills year after year after year, and now we're going to try to actually get something done.
Last two questions. Mark with Hawaii Public Radio.
Hi, this is for the governor or president. I was just curious if you had an idea of how many additional housing units would actually come out of 3202 given data.
Okay, so asking regarding the number of units that we anticipate to come out of SB 3202.
It's really difficult to say right now. There are tens of thousands of properties that will be able to decide whether this is right for them, but it's going to be a process. We do hope that the county councils, and we're obviously very close to Tyler, and he represents the council level of government, but they will make decisions in the near future, and we're actually seeing a lot more action very quickly, like we saw after the short-term rental bill. Before I even signed it, they actually had language for how it would go forward in Maui, and we hope that the councils will take this up quickly. We did set that 2-year kind of cushion so that people don't freak out, but I want people to be building ohana units for their elderly relatives so they don't end up in long-term care, which is very costly. And I want people building ADUs so that we can start renting to our kids, basically across the state, the next generation. It has to happen somewhat quickly. As was mentioned earlier, we're tens of thousands of units short. This is a much more expeditious way to get housing for people. And a lot of the models have changed quite a lot in just the last few years. These are very good housing options for people, so we want it to be available. We will see over the next 12 months what we can do. The combination of houses in the pipeline that are going to be able to move forward because HHFDC is better empowered, combined with this, and finally getting, hopefully, mainland owners of short-term rentals to sell them to local families, that trifecta is really what I see as the solution for our housing crisis.
Okay, and honoring by request, the last question going to Daryl Huff, Hawaii News Now.
Not too long ago, Mayor Caldwell announced this ADU program that he said was going to solve the housing problem. But there's always barriers at the county level that still exist under this bill. For example, and not even the county level, in Liontown, you can't build a second unit because of your covenants. This bill protects all those covenants. So really, where do you think these units are going to be built? Not in the Lina, Makakila, Nakorita, Tili, because they all have these covenants. So where do you guys think you're going to see this happening in most big districts?
The question is around where do we anticipate these ADUs being built?
The short answer is that it'll occur in the areas where there's infrastructure, right? Infrastructure is going to be the biggest continuing barrier for the development of these units. So I think a lot of the places where you've hopefully seen the development of one ADU, now people will have the ability to do another one, and hopefully they can. But I do think your point is important. And the previous point in how many are going to be created, right? Infrastructure is a barrier. Covenants continue to be a barrier. Financing continues to be a barrier. And there is a lot of work for the legislature and the councils to continue to do to remove these barriers. In a lot of ways, changing zoning codes is like, changing the course of a ship slightly. I think over 20 years, I think we will see a lot of units generated, but we have to slash these barriers essentially one by one as we go.
I may add also the neighbor islands, they are going to, I think, see growth. And that's good. It's healthy. There's more space. I will tell you for sure, I expect Maui to benefit from this because of the circumstance. And we're right now working in partnership with the federal government and the county government to build ADUs and CNHA and others. So we're hopeful. We're very hopeful. You see an array of 6 bills here, and I think I signed another 6 yesterday quietly without any pomp and circumstance, because each regulation will move the marker just a little bit. I like the 3202 bill because it's concrete. It's not an abstraction about regulation so much, or funding, bonding. Those things are sometimes harder for people to understand. I like the idea that people can start envisioning, if it fits on their property, that they can now advocate to build that house. A lot of people haven't stepped up to fight for their own rights when they wanted to add housing, which is, I think, the movement that Senator Schatz has been leading, which is the YIMBY movement. Yes, in my backyard, because we care about people. We don't like seeing people on the streets. We definitely don't like to see our children leaving the islands.
Mahalo, Governor. At this time, I'd like to invite federal and state and even city and county legislators and any key stakeholders to come up to the podium for the formal bill signing and subsequent picture taking.
You want to sign some of these, Brian?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So let's say the most interesting for last. So this.
Can we have advocates come up, Gov?
Yeah,
if you
come
can
on,
take
guys.
a pause. Kalamai.
Not wish, though.
All advocates. We love them all.
Does this thing move or does it stay?
Anytime.
Stays as I try, yeah.
There's no women here. That's not so great.
Kelly, come on.
Never. Okay, so I'm gonna sign. Chair, you did something. Barely. Thank you.
Stanley's over here.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Who's the youngest person here? Sterling. Sterling.
Might be Sterling.
Probably Sterling. Thanks, man. Okay. And so I signed these 5 boring bills that do a lot. Incredible difficulty for houselessness. And this is Senate Bill 3202.
If I can ask you to hold that up and maka'ala minawaka.
Hold up some of those. Yeah, sure. It's actually there actually is legislative language.
Anybody have HB 1925? I'll take that.
Which one did you get? Was it yours?
I have it.
Oh, actually,
Is that right? Cool.
because 1925 was ours.
Looking this way at the
Okay, we're
tall
gonna look
gentleman.
here first. Ready, 3, 2, 1. Mahalo. Keep looking over here, in this general area. And we're gonna go over there in that general area.
Right here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Now smile at the news stations, please. Look forward.
Well, hello, everyone. This formally concludes today's news conference.
Thanks.
Nice job.